Are we ready to go?
I believe so.
Okay, wonderful. Right, I'll kick things off then. Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much indeed for joining us this afternoon. My name's Councillor Ross Mackinnon. I'm the ward member for Bradfield on West Berkshire Council, also the executive member for finance and economic development, which is why I'm here really to introduce this session on our Welcome Back Business Grants programme. I'll be handing over to my colleagues Catherine and Sam in a second. In fact, I'll do the introductions up front. So I've already introduced myself. Hopefully you can deal with the accent. I'm not from around here originally. I'm doing my best BBC Scotland voice so that you can understand me. If you need me to repeat anything, then please do shout. I promise I won't be offended. And do shout in the chat box initially, as you saw with the introduction there, with so many participants. And in fact, it's really great to see so many participants actually. But it does get a bit unwieldy with a bit of background noise. So if you could, I think we've muted everyone at the moment. Now you're perfectly able to unmute yourself. We can't mute everyone permanently, so do try and remain muted during the initial presentation, please. That'd be much appreciated. So in a moment I'll be sharing some slides, and my colleague Catherine, so Catherine Mackinnon, who was chatting to me a little bit earlier on, she's our economy manager here at West Berkshire Council. I'm also joined by Sam Robbins, the economic development officer at West Berks as well, and they're going to be taking us through this, I think, really useful information on how to apply for the Welcome Back Business Grants. We've made available £140,000 of funding to be bid for. There'll be a bit of a bidding process, which you'll hear about shortly. And this is West Berkshire Council funded, I'm pleased to say. This isn't, I'm often in the position in these little webinars to say, look, we're dishing out lots of central government funding. We act as the conduit for that. But this is the decision we've made ourselves, is to fund this directly, £140,000. It's essentially match funding with another central government scheme. So I'm very pleased to be able to confirm that. Essentially, the grants are designed to help drive footfall, to celebrate the reopening of the high streets, which is, it has been happening, isn't it? But of course, the big bang date of the 21st of June, that's, I'm still hopeful that's going to be the case. It might be delayed by a couple of weeks, but we have to see what Boris says about that, and also to support our visitor economy. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen. There is a bit of a slide deck. It's not a long one. It's not going to be death by PowerPoint, but it is full of really useful information about what the eligibility criteria are, how to apply. What I would say is, if you have questions during the presentation, if you could pop them in the chat box, and we'll get to them at the end. I'll be monitoring it. And if there is a burning question, which I feel actually, let's just deal with this now, then I'll interrupt Sam and Catherine and get them to do that. But if not, we will answer questions, but we'll just wait to the end of the slide deck is the plan. So I'm going to share my screen, which hopefully you are going to see now. Catherine, can you confirm that that's come through okay?
I can, thank you, Ross.
Wonderful. Right, so there's the introductory slide, which introduces us again. So I guess I'll kick it on here, and Catherine, and hand over to you.
Thank you, Ross. Very kind. So just in case anybody's not familiar with Zoom, there is the middle button at the bottom that says chat. If you click on that, you can then put your questions and comments in, and we will be monitoring them throughout this, as Ross has said. So first slide, what we're going to cover, this is just telling you what we're going to cover within this presentation. We've got slides on each of these. We'll be talking about what the scheme is, the Welcome Back Business Grants, its purpose and goals, and how much you can get. We'll be talking about what criteria that you need, that we'll be looking for, both essential and desirable, and we'll give you a couple of examples of proposals. That'll take about 20 minutes or so, and then at the end we'll have the Q&A. And as I said, questions in the chat, but you'd be very welcome to actually talk about them yourselves as well. We just need to obviously manage this because we've got quite a lot of people. So if we go on to the next slide, introduction. So as Ross has said, the West Berkshire Council has decided to make available £140,000 to be distributed to local business. This is actually a match for another fund, which I'll mention, it's at the bottom of the slide there. And the idea is to distribute that to local businesses through a bidding process in order to make it fair and transparent. So the deadline for bids is the 21st of June, and all of this has to be spent within this financial year, so by March 2022. The amount available is anything from £1,000 to £10,000. We started at 1,000 because there's quite a lot of money, and it needs to be sort of made. There's quite a lot of administration from our end, so we need to make it worthwhile. And as you appreciate, 10,000 is quite a lot. However, businesses can band together, and that would be sort of £10,000 each. So if you formed a little sort of group, you could potentially get more than £10,000 between you. So the main priorities of this scheme are to drive footfall in our town centres and high streets across West Berkshire, and also very importantly to support the visitor economy. So it might not necessarily be high streets and town centres. There may be other businesses out there who are offering services and hospitality to tourists and also local people, and they would be eligible. And as I mentioned before, this is a distinct pot of money linked to the Welcome Back Fund, which is a European-based pot of money that the government is handing out to do a similar thing, which is about public realm changes and welcoming back people into town centres and high streets. But that money has to be given to town and parish councils or sort of public organisations rather than businesses. So what the council's decided to do is create its own scheme aimed absolutely at businesses. So I'll hand over next to Sam, who'll take you through the more detail of the application process.
Great, thank you very much, Catherine. So as has been mentioned, this is being run on a proposal process. So the application form can be downloaded from our website, where we've got all the information around the grant, the essential eligibility, and some sort of examples of what we'd like to see. Fill in the form with as much detail as possible, and attach any quotes that you're able to and relevant information. So things like links to any spend, and there's a few boxes in the form which will give you an opportunity to talk about what your proposal is, and sort of the justification for it and how it matches what we're trying to do and how it matches the scheme. So, for example, there's an opportunity to talk about the kind of footfall that you would anticipate being generated from your proposal, and sort of what you see the local economic impacts of your proposal being. So not just for your premises, but also for the area in which you do business. So when the applications come through, the first stage is that our team are going to assess them against the essential eligibility criteria. So we have a sort of yes/no list of things that all businesses need to meet in order for us to take their application on further. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So that those ones that pass that first stage will then be taken to a review panel. And that consists of Catherine, our economy manager, myself, and then a member, which will either be Ross here on the call or Lynn Doherty, the leader of the council. And so then that panel makes decisions based on sort of like a scoring matrix that we've put together, which captures all of the details of like the essential and desirable criteria that I'll talk about in a bit. So the decisions from this point are going to be made from the week commencing 21st of June. So that's basically a week on Monday. That's the deadline. And then in that week, we're going to have a load of panels and reach the decisions on which ones we're going to fund. There is potentially some flexibility on that date, depending on the amount of applications we get, and basically what we're able to offer. So then the spending that we agree to can proceed after we sent you a grant offer email. So obviously, the idea of this is that we're going to reach an agreement that will fund certain activities, and then upon receipt of like proof that you've made that expenditure, we'll then pay the grant in arrears to you. So if we come to an agreement that you have a grant scheme or a total grant value of, let's say, £7,000, once the entire spend has been made, we'll then start reimbursing that to you. I'll just move on to the next one, which is essential criteria. So like I say, these are the key points that we've put in to ensure that we're only dealing with or only accepting applications from small local businesses, basically. So less than 50 employees being the like standard definition for an SME. trading for 6 months, has a business bank account, which is part of the auditing requirement for these. We can't really give public money to like a private bank account. Not part of a national franchise and trading from a West Berkshire premises. So, so that would be a business which is registered and trading in West Berkshire, not just sort of registered here. In order to apply, you must be either a limited company or partnership or a sole trader. So unfortunately, we're not accepting applications from charities at the moment. And finally, the application you make must not be an application to recoup spending that you've already made. So this is all about additionality, new activities, new ideas, and what we're not going to be doing is reimbursing people basically for things that have already happened. And then onto the desirable criteria. So yeah, this is really the flesh of what we wanted to get onto today, which is what are we looking for in proposals? Like what are we trying to do, and what will get you there? So we're looking for proposals, obviously, as we said, that will create new footfall. So that's in your business and in the surrounding area, be that a high street, a shopping area, or you know, somewhere more rural. It needs to be something that offers additional activities and changes that would not be occurring without this grant in place. So we're talking about sort of, yeah, additionality here, and sort of demonstrating that without this funding, you wouldn't have thought of or be able to do whatever it is you're applying to do. We'd like to see all applications to have some part funding from the applicant. And so this is just part of just showing your commitment and us knowing that there is a commitment there from you. And there will be an element of scoring higher based on the amount of part funding that you offer. So someone who can match fund a larger proportion, there will be a small amount of points available to sort of reflect that, but only up to about 50%. So we're not interested in anyone who's offering to pay more than 50% of the grant. We're not going to award further points on that because in that territory, you're getting into the to it almost being something that could be afforded otherwise were it not for the grant. So we're looking for applications that are creative and innovative. So again, that relates to additionality and something that we haven't seen, or something that really is going to bring something new to the high street or to the local economy this summer. We need to see a clear and achievable plan. So just, yeah, well written with realistic timeframes in there. And again, you know, we will score based on how realistic we think that plan is and the time frame of it. And there is a small preference for businesses which are on the high street or in neighbourhood shopping areas, but it's not essential that you be in one of those locations. So there's a small amount of points available basically for businesses that are in those areas. And the idea of that is that any spend which is made on those businesses in those areas is going to have more likely a wider local impact, because it's going to sort of secondhand influence you know, other local businesses in that area. And then finally, what we're trying to do is provide an equitable geographical spreads with this. So when we start assessing the applications from the 21st of June onwards properly, we're not just going to hand all the money out to businesses in Newbury. You know, an aspect of this is going to be to ensure that if we get applications from across the district, that we're able to make a nice even spread. Yeah, and then
Sam, just before we move on, I was going to throw a few questions at you, or actually two questions that we've received. The first one's from Sarah Charlesworth. So thanks, Sarah. It's on both of these are on eligibility, if you can see them in the chat box. So Sarah's asking if it's an independent business owner who've bought a coffee shop franchise or similar, would that be ineligible? It's referring to the essential criteria on the previous slide, which said that not a national franchise was required for eligibility. Can you add anything to that?
So would that be something along the lines of like Costa Coffee or something, where they've gone on a national franchise?
I'm assuming so. Sarah, I don't know if you want to unmute and
yes. Yeah, that's that type of thing. So it is an independent business, but they've bought, as you say, perhaps a Costa or some other, you know, I mean, yeah, a sort of, it could be a print organisation, but they've bought into a franchise, but they have to obviously cover their own costs, and they are actually an independent business. Does that, would they be eligible?
Yeah, Catherine, I can see you've got your hand up. Do you want to step in?
Yeah, I think if I can jump in there. The reasoning behind not making those who bought into a national franchise eligible is that at the end of the day, we're really focusing as local independent businesses. If you've bought into a national franchise, one assumes that there is support there for this kind of thing and communications, etc., and that therefore that would be part of what you'd bought into. So hence that a national franchise would be ineligible. But if there's a sort of local franchise of maybe just, a couple of different outlets that somebody's bought into, that might be eligible.
Okay,
so if you think what we're thinking here is local independent businesses.
Yeah. Okay, I understand you. That's great. Thank you.
Thanks both, and thanks, Sarah, for your question. I'll come to Louise's question, Louise Callow. So we're a charity, but registered as a limited company. So a bit of a grey area there, perhaps. So would that situation be eligible? Sam, you mentioned there that we're not looking to fund charities at the minute, only limited companies. Well, what if there's a bit of both in there?
Yeah, I think if it's a bit of both, we would welcome the application and deal with it, deal with the merits of it that we see in the application. So yeah, if it's a limited company but operates on a charitable basis, as in like not for profit, then I would say yeah, drop us an email and explain a bit more about the structure of the company, and then we could take that from there.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sam, and thanks, Louise. And just finally, before I let you loose back on the slide, Sam, Vikas is asking, would a new business proposal be eligible? So like a brand new business. I guess that'd be fairly challenging to get up and running by that point. But Sam, is there anything in the eligibility criteria about that?
Interesting. We certainly haven't said, we haven't considered that, to be honest, at this point. I think if what you're talking about is setting up a new business for the express purpose of delivering an activity that falls under this scheme, then we could potentially consider it. But again, we're not looking really to create permanent changes here. So I think if it was like an event or something like that, then yes, definitely. But yeah, that's an interesting one, and I think probably we'd have to look at that individually. Catherine, your hands up.
Catherine, I'll bring you in here at this point.
Yeah, I just think going back to the slide, we do ask for trading accounts the last 6 months, and the purpose behind that is really, again, it's about auditing. So we would need to make sure that the company was financially viable and sort of trading. So again, there may be individual circumstances which would be worth having a discussion about. But in general, we'd be looking for an existing company that's looking to reopen rather than open.
Yeah, thanks for that, Catherine. What I'll do, I can see a couple of other questions in there, but I'll let Sam make a bit more progress because we're not far off the end, and then we'll come back to pertinent questions once we've done that. So Sam, do you want to carry on?
Great, cheers, Ross. Yeah, can you just move on to the next slide? Awesome. Yes, so what we've put together here is to kind of illustrate this a little bit and yeah, flesh it out for you guys is some example proposals. So 2 examples of hypothetical proposals that we might look at favourably, and then one that we would say would most likely be unsuccessful. Don't take this as gospel, because everything is going to be assessed by a panel, and we'll assess everything on its own merits. And so if maybe these look like something that you're putting forward, but it doesn't contain other elements that yours would contain, then don't be discouraged. So the first one might be a local home-based catering company is applying for funding to set up a market stall. So they're bidding for a gazebo, a Wi-Fi router, contactless card reader, and other essential equipment in order to get them going with this physical market stall in, for example, Newbury and Hungerford Market. And they've provided quotes and links with that for what they're looking to spend it on, and it's well justified in terms of footfall and impact. So the reason that we'd be looking at this favourably is because it's a proposal that brings something new to both those markets and to the applicant. It's with a sort of element of creativity and innovation there. It will create significant footfall, undoubtedly, because you're offering a physical attraction for a customer to go and visit. and also it's not a permanent fixture or instalment. So yeah, that's broadly why that would meet the criteria that we're looking for here. And then another example on the sort of more event side of things might be like a local hospitality business applies to host a welcome back event. So, you know, welcome back to our business, restrictions have been lifted, let's all enjoy, you know, ourselves in the summer. So they might apply to rent some equipment, tables, chairs, maybe a music system, and then offer some free refreshments or activities to the people that come along. And we've said hospitality business, that could be any kind of business which hosts customers, you know, in person. And the reason that we'd look at that well is because it's a one-off event that would not be happening otherwise. It's clearly creating footfall, and it's great publicity all around. And again, it's, you know, this is a non-permanent sort of fixture. And then finally, an example of an unsuccessful proposal. Then this is one that's kind of unsuccessful all round. So this will be like a local hospitality business, for example, applies for a refurbishment to their premises, including the exterior, and then installing a big screen TV. And, you know, they might have well justified it in terms of, you know, new customers that are going to be attracted. But the issue with this is that these would be permanent physical changes that, as far as we're concerned, don't provide additionality, because the applicant should and could have or could possibly have undertaken them otherwise, you know, without this grant funding, because it's kind of just like part of running a business. And then, you know, there's little argument that this would be creating additional footfall, because what you're offering is just kind of an improvement on what's already there, as opposed to something new and additional. So yeah, again, it's a non-exhaustive list. We just wanted to give you some sort of food for thought on what we had in our minds when putting the eligibility criteria together. If you wanted to send in some emails, you know, with your own example to sort of sound out ideas, or put that in as a message later on today, then that's absolutely fine. We're happy to talk through them, and you know, what we'd rather do is help you out in the first instance, instead of having to go back and tweak an application you've already made. So I think that brings an end to my section, and then just over to Ross.
Thanks, Sam. That's really informative. I guess I'm going to put that email contact, which a couple of people are asking for in the chat, up in just a second. And I mean, I don't need to tell people to pop questions in the chat box, because that's all.
Yeah, I've just put it in the chat, Ross.
Yeah, oh, brilliant. Thanks, Catherine. That's great. If we do, we've earmarked an hour for this session. So if we do end up running past 3 o'clock, any questions that we can't get to today, we'll respond to via email. So if you want to, when you put your question in there, pop your email address in there if you want to get back to us, or as Catherine's just popped in there, the economic development at westberks.gov.uk. Just drop us a line if you want to clarify anything really. So there's our, I'll leave that up for a few seconds as well. While I'm doing that, I'll just go back to a few questions from earlier on. I've got a question from Jodie, who's she's acquired a pub on a village high street. It's been closed, so she's not been trading with the pub for 6 months. They do have another pub which has. Would that sort of thing be eligible? So I think we've got a few more questions about eligibility here, Catherine.
Thanks, and thank you, Jodie, for the question. I would say for sure, it definitely sounds like it would be eligible. If you've got some trading accounts from another pub that you've been running, that clearly shows that you have been trading for 6 months. So for sure, definitely put something in. Happy to talk to you about that in more detail.
Brilliant. Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, Jodie. Rachel Montague is asking about could we get a schedule of events already scheduled in the town? Rachel, I don't know if you're there. If you can just clarify exactly what you had in mind there. So if you want to unmute yourself and crack on.
Hi, Ross. Yes, we're looking at doing maybe a weekend event. But I think if we're looking to do something big in the Newbury area, wouldn't it be great if there are some initiatives that can be pulled, and there could be some kind of significant weekends that various business owners will have on at the same time to draw maybe just a wider population than the Newbury population in, something that could be publicised on a bigger basis.
Thanks for clarifying that, Rachel. Catherine, I'll hand that to you.
Yeah, I would very much like, you mentioned Newbury, Rachel, because that was going to be my question as to which town, but we've got Alison Drummond here, from the Newbury bid, and she's got a hand up. So I know she wants to say something, but what I would add just before she does is that we mentioned before there's a sort of dual scheme running here. So this is business grants for businesses to run events or activities, but there's also another pot of money which can be spent by organisations like the Newbury bid. So there would be other activities going on, if you like, in the public realm. So, for example, there could well be things going on in the town centre that are being organised by the town council or the bid, and I'm sure that Alison and her team would be happy to discuss any sort of liaison with you. But Alison.
Yeah, Alison, do you want to come in there? Thanks very much.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, Rachel, we've got a listing of most stuff that's confirmed so far. Unfortunately, most stuff hasn't been confirmed because of COVID and everything else. But I'm currently working with both West Berkshire Council and the Town Council to get an updated list. So I'll get that over to you and out on the website ASAP. Thank you, guys. Hi, everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Alison Drummond, the Operations Manager from the Newbury bid. Just want to say this is really delighted that this grant pot is available. This is just such an amazing pot of money. Really delighted with that. I think it's going to help a lot of businesses. Just got a couple of concerns that I want to raise, probably on behalf of a couple of businesses. My first concern is just timescales. At the moment, obviously, everyone is absolutely up against it, trying to get their businesses reopened, trying to readjust their business models, their operating procedures. Obviously, the impact on all sectors has been phenomenal, as we know. So one of my main concerns is the timescale that people have now got to, especially with 21st of June. Is it happening? Who knows at this stage? But where everyone is so busy trying to get ready for that next date, and obviously, just if we've got a short timescale for people to put in applications with getting quotes and so on, just want to raise that as a bit of concern. Also just a bit concerned with no one's got any money at the moment. As we all know, COVID has had a phenomenal impact on everyone. I heard a report on BBC News this morning that I think it's less than 25% of hospitality venues think they're going to get through to the end of the summer this year, which is going to be absolutely awful, not just for Newbury and not just for West Berkshire, but for the whole of our country. So with that in mind, how can we expect businesses to pay anything up front? They're not going to have access, and the majority are not going to have access to any funds at the moment to pay for anything. So great if they get the money, but afterwards they're just not even going to have the money to make the payments up front. And then last but not least, where it's going to be part funded by the applicant. Again, I understand, I think that's a great incentive with match funding. However, again, back to the previous point, people just don't have the money. They struggle getting the money, where everyone had to install new hand sanitizers, bring in additional staffing for their pubs and restaurants and all the other businesses. I mean, we've all seen at the moment there is a national staff shortage throughout all sectors. That's really hit hospitality trade really hard. And they're just the concerns that I want to raise. But apart from that, this is amazing. I just want to raise those couple of concerns. I'll shut up now.
Well, Alison, the first bit then, glad that you think it's amazing.
It is great. It is great because, you know, it's not every day that the council gives out money, and this is a really great thing. We understand.
Alison, that's the only bit that I heard. I just heard you say it was amazing and nothing else. I completely hear those concerns, and they are things that we thought about. I mean, you're absolutely right. I guess on the timescale thing, we had a balancing act to strike between, giving a reasonable amount of time as possible, but as you said, people need the money, so we wanted to act fast, as well as giving businesses a week or so to prepare. I appreciate it's a tight timescale, but that was the balancing act. You might not agree with the decision, but there was a thought process behind it. Likewise, would be great if we could give the money first and get the receipts later. Understand you completely about the fact that money is tight, and then on my other hat as a finance executive member is that you've got public money protection, and you need to make sure that you're distributing public money for what it's supposed to be for. So I'm not disagreeing with you, and it's probably not the forum for us to have a debate about those things, because we could probably go on for quite a while, but I'm just really grateful that you're here to raise those perfectly valid points, and also to give overall support for the scheme. So thanks very much for that indeed, Alison. Just coming back to a few more questions then. Let me see, I hope I've not missed anyone. I've got a question from Carl McFarlane. This is an eligibility criteria question. If we don't pay business rates, but we are a registered limited company, are we still eligible? I'm pretty sure that's a yes, but Catherine's nodding away and Sam's nodding away.
Yep, big yes.
Hand over to them. Yeah, you don't need to be a ratepayer, but you do just need to have the correct legal vehicle, whether it's limited company, sole trader, or whatever. Louise and Lewis were both asking for email contact, so I think we've dealt with that one. And Melissa Buick McCain, looking at doing a publicity event to show that we're open, but wouldn't be at the location of my space in town. Would like to do it at a bigger space, although it would be in Newbury somewhere. Would this be okay? Melissa, I'm going to just hand that over to you. I've probably just not given the details there that you had in mind. Do you want to just unmute and explain exactly what you mean? Oh, Melissa, sorry, we're not hearing you at all. I know that you're not on mute because the little red microphone isn't appearing, but I just wonder if you've got the correct microphone selected. We just didn't hear a word there. I might come back to you, Melissa, actually, if that's okay. Yeah, I can see you speaking, but we're not hearing anything there, Melissa, sorry. I'll come back to you.
Ross, you've muted yourself now.
I would just
at least once a meeting. Sorry, Catherine, carry on.
I was just going to say that if Melissa isn't able to talk to us, just to answer that, as far as I'm concerned, that would be absolutely fine. You don't have to do it in your own space, as long as if you've got the permissions and the whatever you need to actually do it in someone else's space. So, for example, if you wanted to hire a space to do it, obviously you would have to include that. And if you wanted to use public realm space, you might well have to have a license. For example, if you wanted to, put tables and chairs out on the road or something, you would have to go through all the proper channels. This is simply to give you money to be able to put events on. It's not to kind of circumvent any licensing requirements.
Actually, I'm just going to add on to the end of that as well, Catherine, which is that if you do require some sort of permissions to deliver what it is that you're proposing, it's best that those are embedded in your application and that you show that you've pursued that already, either that you've got it or that you're in an advanced stage, because we won't be making a grant offer until we're confident that there's a
deliverable.
Yeah, it's deliverable and there's a very strong chance that it's going to happen. And the other thing to point out as well is that we can't fund any license costs with West Berkshire Council. So we're not going to be paying this money back to ourselves for any reason. And so if there are licensing costs involved with us, that would potentially be something that your match funding could cover.
Brilliant. Thanks both for that. And Melissa, hopefully that's been reasonably helpful for you. Thumbs up. Excellent. Yeah, I'll come to Warwick Keskin's question now. So Sam, I think you were talking about consortia of businesses, smaller businesses getting together for a bid. So Warwick says a selection of say 11 independent businesses grouped together. Does one need to be the lead business for the application, or can they all just muck in equally? What would be your preference there, Sam?
I think to make the application, if you had a large group like that, where we potentially be looking at a fairly big chunk of money, first of all, to say that we won't give it all away to one cohort of businesses all at once. What we would probably just want to see one application in the first instance, so submitted from one email inbox, explaining who's on board with it, and then eventually we would need just one account to make the payments to, as part of the grant agreement. But if it was a sort of a large, slightly more complex vehicle like that, we would probably just have discussions with you to figure out how we do that, in terms of who we reimburse for the spending. But to make the application in the first place, yes, please come from one inbox. Catherine, do you want to add on?
Yeah, and the other thing I would say is we mentioned before about the need to be geographically fair. And if there's welcome back funding going to, for example, the Newbury bid or Thatcham Town Council or Newbury Town Council, we would need to ensure that not all of the money was being spent in one place. So that would have to be a consideration.
Thank you, Catherine. And Owen Jeffrey, hi Owen, I hope you're well. Owen's just clarifying something from the presentation. I think it was Catherine or Sam that mentioned about the part funded by the applicant. Did you say that the trader must put in 50% of the total cost?
No.
I don't think that's the case. Sam, do you want to just clarify that?
Yeah, that's fine. I'll clarify that. No, they don't need to put in 50%. There is no minimum requirement for match funding. We would just like to see some But what the 50% was referencing was that we will sort of make points available to people depending on how much they offer, because it's you know, a higher commitment, but up to a threshold of 50%. And then after that point, we would not be considering it to be more preferable because it's gone over 50% match funding, if that makes sense.
So it would actually be undesirable for the trader to be paying more than 50.
Yeah, essentially, because it demonstrates that this would be affordable without this grant.
All right, lovely. So
Yeah,
up to 50%, I think, Owen, there you go.
Yeah, you get more points. More points if you put in 20%, even more points if you put in 50%. And it all comes down to a scoring system. Well, I mean, partly comes down to a scoring system in the end. So, yeah. Yeah,
I mean, it would be great if we could put even more money in, and it didn't have to be a competitive process, but we will have to assess the bids against criteria and pick the ones that we think best meet them. That does mean that some bids are likely to be unsuccessful, which is a bit of a shame. But I think overall the criteria we've come up with are fair and balanced, and will result in good decisions being made. Lovely. I don't think I've missed anyone out. So if there's Peter, yeah. So I spotted your question earlier on, Peter, about road closures. I wasn't sure it was particularly relevant to handing out grants.
Well, it is really, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, if I'm going to waste my time putting an application to look at putting an event on in the road, and you refuse it because you won't close the road off, it's wasting my time and your time, isn't it?
Well, I think I know what you're referring to. You know, previous correspondence that we've had about can we make road closures or can we not? And obviously there's a balance to be struck there about safety in the highway and pavement. It's not a question of not being willing to close roads where we're able to do so. I think our planners have been willing to do that where it's been appropriate. This grant in particular,
isn't saving businesses in Newbury important?
Well, of course it is, absolutely.
So why isn't it essential then to close the roads to help people trade in the streets?
Sometimes it's not possible to close roads because vehicular access must be maintained at all times. There's minimum width of pavements that have to be there. You know, I know that we've been through this before, and I'm not sure it's particularly useful to rehash that debate.
Okay.
Today. But if you want to have a further discussion offline, Peter, I'm more than willing to do that.
I think it would be useful to add in there as well, you know, if there is a road closure necessary as part of a proposal, that instead of taking the time to make the full application in the first place, it's better to reach out to us first about specifically what you would need closed. And then we can explore that first and say whether it's feasible at all or not.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sam. I don't think we've got anyone outstanding anymore. So look, thanks so much for coming and expressing an interest. I hope you found it reasonably useful and informative, and you're going to put a bid in. I'm looking forward to assessing the bids. Any other information, if something comes to you, you know, 2 minutes after we close the call, then please do get in touch with our guys, with Catherine and Sam. Brilliant, Jodie, that's excellent. Anka's asking about sending the recording. I'll leave that over to my colleagues there. I've got the technical ability of a house brick.
We'll post it on the website that I gave the link
Brilliant.
for. So the Welcome Back Fund webpage, we'll post the recording link on there.
Good stuff. So thanks everyone. We'll close the session now and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.